So good morning, everyone, and welcome to Tourism Quality Assurance of Newfoundland and Labrador, or TQA, which I will also refer to the company as, our webinar on the benefits of an accessibility audit through the Access Advisor program. My name is Nancy McGraw, and I'm the program manager for TQA. So I would first like to acknowledge our guest speaker today, who is Nancy Reed with the Coalition of Persons with Disabilities. With a background in heritage facilities management and economic and social development programming, Nancy Reed has considerable frontline and management experience in tourism and community sectors in the province. Having acquired a mobility disability as an adult, she has realized a passion for the advocacy of persons with disabilities and of the benefits of universal design. Currently, she is the Manager of Strategic Initiatives with the Coalition of Persons with Disabilities, Newfoundland and Labrador. She uses her personal and professional experience to connect with others about access, opportunity, and equity. So thank you very much, Nancy, for joining with us today.
Thanks, Nancy. Glad to be here today.
So we're keeping it easy with remembering names today with having two Nancys. In addition, I would also like to acknowledge my colleague, Jennifer Brown, who is the Technology Resource Coordinator for Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador, and she's going to be helping us with the presentation and also recording it so that we will have it available online on our YouTube channel for others to see as well. So we're very pleased that you could join us today in the second of 4 webinars that we will be presenting this month on TQA's programs. The goal of Tourism Quality Assurance is to raise the level of quality in tourism products and services in Newfoundland and Labrador. We do this through our Canada Select and Camping Select programs, in which we inspect and rate roofed accommodations and campgrounds in the province, helping operators raise the level of quality in their establishments, as well as our newly introduced welcome programs. The welcome programs consist of Pets Welcome, Cyclists Welcome, and Motorcyclists Welcome. We held a webinar on these programs earlier in November. In case you missed it, the recording is available on our YouTube channel, and there is a link on our website under program updates as well. TQA are also partners of the Newfoundland Labrador Tourism Board and provide validation for the Tourism Assurance Plan, or TAP. Lots of acronyms in tourism. And last but not least, the Access Advisor program, which is a program which helps provide auditing of accessibility and designates different levels of accessibility for any business or event. If you are following along online today and you'd like to share your thoughts on social media, please feel free to tweet or post using the hashtag #EveryoneIsWelcome. So between the two Nancys and Jennifer, we're going to get started on our webinar today. Before we dive into Access Advisor in depth, I would like to take a few moments to give a review of TQA. As many of you know, TQA was originally known as Canada Select, and there was no doubt the impact that the Canada Select program had on elevating the level of quality in accommodations and campgrounds in the province. In fact, in 1994, 90% of the properties rated were at a 2-star or less, and by 2013, 75% of the properties had a 3-star or above. In 2014, the board undertook a strategic planning process as it wanted to be the driving force behind quality assurance priorities in the province. Stakeholder input was an important part of this process. So the board evolved their governance and management structure in order to adopt other programs that would be reflective of the goals and priorities of the provincial tourism strategy, Vision 2020. There were 2 key priorities that were identified. The first was that Canada Select was a great program, however, it needed to evolve in order to meet the changing needs of travelers. And the second thing was that we needed to broaden our quality assurance programming and consider programming that extended beyond accommodations. The biggest opportunity that we had heard from the Newfoundland Labrador tourism industry and travelers was for the Access Advisor program. So just a note on our progress of where we are. So we're in year 2 of a 3-year expansion plan right now, and this plan defines the evolution of the organization. Just some key points on the expansion plan and our progress. As I mentioned, it was identified that Canada Select needed to evolve to be an organization that was more focused on quality in the star ratings. This program was updated. In the old program, for example, if you didn't have closet doors, you couldn't be a 4-star property, everyone needed a certain size TV, etc. But the program today does a great job at ensuring minimum standards are maintained and assigns a star rating that is reflective of the level of quality within the accommodation. The new program has been received very well, and it allows operators to pick the amenities that they wish to market to their customers. We have successfully introduced our Access Advisor program, which is a program designed to assign levels of accessibility. The program does two things. It provides much-needed auditing of accessibility within the tourism industry and beyond, and it also encourages business owners to think beyond wheelchairs, to consider all types of disabilities. To date, we have about 35 operators, both inside and outside the accommodation sector, that we are working with on achieving their designation, and we'll hear more, of course, on Access Advisor in a few moments. We have introduced a suite of welcome programs, which include the Pets Welcome, Cyclist Welcome, and Motorcyclist Welcome programs. And these voluntary programs are designed to help operators who wish to attract these diverse markets. And just as a side note, we'll get into more detail on the Canada Select program in our next webinar on November 22nd. And there was a webinar, as I mentioned, complete on welcome programs available on the website. We do have an enhanced communications and marketing plan, and we're building on our brand awareness. We're talking to program participants and engaging in events within the industry. Coaching is an integral part of TQA's values, and we are available to assist operators who wish to increase the level of quality in their tourism operations. TQA are playing a validation role for the Tourism Assurance Plan, or TAP. And of course, TAP is a cooperative effort between industry and government, which outlines the 5 minimum standards that all tourism operators must meet in order to be marketed through the provincial tourism marketing strategy. Currently, TQA's role in this initiative is to provide validation for TAP standards. And this might include things such as checking to ensure operators have a valid email address or website, ensuring that what they're advertising or promoted is reflective of the actual experience. And we would also be involved in the complaints procedure. And again, stay tuned for more information during the TAP webinar, which is scheduled for November 29th. I just want to take a moment to introduce our board of directors. We are governed by a board of directors who provide us with strategic direction and leadership. So Kathy Lohman is currently our chair, and she's with Hotel Port aux Basques. The remainder of the board is comprised of industry representatives. Deborah Borden from the Anchor Inn Hotel and Suites represents the cottage cabin vacation home sector. Wayne Hallett from the Prince of Wales Inn is our B&B representative. Jackie Hill just recently joined our board from the Capitol Hotel, and she's our hotel motel representative. And Jeff LeGros from Call LeGros Insurance is our consumer representative. As well, we have 3 ex officio representatives. Shane Kernew is our federal representative from ACOA. Andrea Peddle from the Department of Tourism, Culture, Industry, and Innovation is our provincial representative. And Craig Foley from Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador is our Tourism Industry Association representative. We are actually currently looking to fill a vacancy in our campground sector. So if you do know of anyone in this sector that would be interested, by all means, pass along their name to us, and we'll reach out. So today's webinar is on Access Advisor and the benefits of an accessibility audit. We have all seen the universal symbol of accessibility displayed in lots of businesses throughout the province and globally. However, not all businesses approach accessibility the same. And with so many different types of disabilities, it's imperative that we determine if you meet the standard for full accessibility or not. This is important in order to provide persons with disabilities and their families with verified information on the level of accessibility that is available throughout tourism operations in the province. In this presentation, we will learn more about different levels of accessibility and the benefits to you as business owners and operators of participating in this program. So what is Access Advisor? Access Advisor is a program that verifies and designates levels of accessibility, and it can be applied to any type of business, restaurant, tourism experience, event, both inside and outside. The program focuses on the promotion and education on accessibility. Accessibility no longer is solely a wheelchair issue. It is the degree to which a product or service or environment is available to as many people as possible, crossing all age groups, interests, activity level, and need, which is also referred to as being universally accessible. And I'll ask Nancy to expand on that just in a moment now. Accessbility is built around the idea of inclusion and that everyone is welcome regardless of their abilities. It aligns with TQA's goals and values of raising the bar for quality experiences in our province. Travelers know in advance what level of accessibility to expect when visiting a property, and this results in a more positive experience. Seniors and persons with disabilities travel is an increasing market in this province. And Accessbility is a program that empowers business owners and operators to prepare for and capture this growing market. So Nancy, I just mentioned universally accessible here. I know that's your area of expertise. Perhaps we could just take a moment and you can explain a little bit further what this actually means.
Sure. Sounds good, Nancy. Thanks. I'll talk about universal access, or universally accessible, and universal design, and we sometimes use both of those phrases, meaning the same thing. Essentially, when we talk about something that is universally designed or universally accessible, it really means that the focus is on the universality of that. It means that it's available for all people. It's not just about thinking not just thinking about persons with disabilities, but it's about people in general. And so often, things that make sense. So if I'm an individual who is walking and pushing a baby stroller, if I'm a person who is doing some catering and I have numbers of materials that I'm trying to get through a door, or if I'm an individual who is using a wheelchair, or just having 2 coffees in my hand and trying to open a door and not having the capacity to turn a knob, those are opportunities for universal design. And I think that in the following slide, we'll kind of get into some details about what that means from the Newfoundland and Labrador perspective. So if you could just give me 1 second to kind of catch up to speed with that.
Yeah. Perfect, thanks. All right, so we'll get the Universal Design NL website up and running. You should be able to see that there now shortly. We're just going to switch screens for 1 sec. So you should all be able to see a picture of an outline of a house, and it's called Universal Design NL. Good? Okay. Yeah, you can go ahead.
All right. Thanks, Nancy. And Jennifer. Jennifer's my tech savior here today. Thanks, Jennifer. Basically, what we're looking at here in this screen, and the reason I've asked Nancy to include this, is that I think this can kind of give us an idea of some of what universal design really looks like. And I'm going to ask Nancy to jump in at any point if what I'm saying is not what makes sense to your group. But the site that we're looking at right here is Universal Design NL, and it's a site that was created by the Coalition of Persons with Disabilities Newfoundland and Labrador last year. And it's available online. It's a live site right now, so anybody can go in there and access it. And it's got a lot of resource material available to you. So I'm not going to go into any heavy detail right now, but I'd encourage you all to have a look at it later on to see ways that there might be things that we'll talk about through this session that will be relevant for your business and opportunities for you to ensure that you're really doing things that will impact your bottom line positively and ensure that you can allow the greatest number of customers through your doors. Can I just scroll down here, Jennifer? Okay. Please, everybody, bear with me. What we're seeing right here on the front page, and this is just the front page of the site, is an interactive tool. And I'm just going to click on something to kind of give you an idea of what we have here. The particular tool that you're seeing right here obviously is a residential space. But you can certainly translate a lot of the principles or a lot of the features that I'm going to just indicate briefly to any place of business or of living. I'm just going to do something, and please explore it on your own. I'm going to click on the first tab, which says Entrance, and that's going to allow me to just, when I'm finding my mouse, sorry, everybody. There we go.
Yeah, it's a quirky mouse.
Yeah, there you go. And it's different when you're in somebody else's space, always. I'm just going to click on one of the little numbers here, and you can see a tab that will come up associated with every number. And that will give you ideas of what universal design may look like. There's no cut and dry. Universal design includes many things. Here's some examples. obviously this one talks about a wide doorway. We always recommend a 42-inch door. 36-inch door is minimum code right now for resident or for commercial areas. But whoever wanted to go through its 32-inch door anyway, I always say if you have the choice, why would you put in a 32-inch door when you can put in a 36? It's just as easy to move a Chesterfield through or it's easier to move a Chesterfield through a 36-inch door than a 32. I'm sure we've all encountered that. So there's just a few ideas by clicking on these things. If I come down to the tabs again, I'm just going to go into the backyard. And again, we have a number of areas that we can see here. Everything, number 4 says surface areas that are made out of materials that are not prone to being slippery and do not deteriorate easily. So really common sense things that make sense for everybody. But I'm going to go edit the virtual tool. Again, there's so many things that you can explore on your own, and I'm going to encourage everybody to do that. I'm just going to go really quickly into a couple of the tabs down the bottom because there's real material here that would be available for everybody. And again, we're going to get a little bit further, and I don't want to go into this in any real detail right now, but there's a resource page. So when you leave this this webinar and you're looking for more information, there is really information available to you right here. And you can see all of these resources which link you to some great information. In addition to that, I'm just going to go back to another tab. And I like this one because it really gives information about what it can benefit to your business, universal design, and what that means to the business. And I'm hoping that it's going to link me there. Okay. And so please have a look at that. But universal design really factors into the bottom line. And again, we'll get into that really in just a moment. And there's also some other examples in this website that can give you some real concrete examples of ways that universal design can be incorporated in ways that don't look like institutional or areas that are unappealing or you can still maintain the aesthetic value of something even though they have universally designed features in them. This picture that you're seeing right here is actually a photo taken of somebody's home with universal design principles in mind. And I don't think that you're going to see anything in this space that looks in any way institutional or aesthetically unappealing, but there's universal design features hidden in these spaces that you're not even seeing. The photo that you're seeing right here has adequate space for 2 wheelchair users to pass each other in the hallway. The homeowner actually, in that home, there are 2 wheelchair users. You'll see that there's lever handles on the doorways. There's also some sliding doors or pocket doors in the space. And that makes sense for so many individuals. It makes sense for wheelchairs. It also makes sense for furniture and placement of things because doorways often get in the way of ourselves. So there's so many opportunities here. Again, just one of the pieces of this site that give you some tools and some ideas of things that you can see around universal design. And universal design is built on principles. And there are 7 principles of universal design. Universal design is not just one thing, but it's built around these 7 principles. And again, I don't want to go into all the detail right now because it's just too much to figure out right here. But the information is available to you, and I'm going to encourage everybody to really consider that when you're really thinking about changes that you need to make in your spaces or in your places or opportunities for new development.
Thank you very much, Nancy. That was excellent. I know I've said this to you before, but I'm sure I learn something new every time you and I speak. But that's a great real-life example there, and you're right, we will get into some more details on the actual benefits to operators, being the financial aspect and planning for the future and how that can save you money for sure. But those are some great real-life examples. Thanks so much for sharing that with us. And you can take us through some of those benefits that you just mentioned.
Okay, perfect, Nancy. Thank you. Through universal design, your business can realize many benefits. As universal design clearly enables access and inclusion, it's really nice as a business to be able to answer the phone and say, yes, we are fully accessible, and really nice to actually prove that. Let me suggest to you that if we want to increase our customer base, we first need to make people feel welcome by inviting them through the front door. One impact to be realized by having universally designed, inclusive, accessible spaces and tools is that it makes all customers feel comfortable, valued, and appreciated. You know, some 75,000 people in this province alone, self-identify as a person with a disability. You consider the buying power of that number of people and the buying power of their accompanying friends and family. I don't think that any group, any business wants to close the door on a group of customers that large. And you consider that, and that's only the estimated number of those who self-identify in this province. Your market is clearly broader than those numbers. I'd like to just kind of tell you a little quick story about myself. Myself and my daughter both use wheelchairs. My daughter has multiple disabilities, and last year, she's 20 years old now, so on her graduation a few months back, we wanted to take her out to a dinner, and I live in rural Newfoundland, and she wanted to go to a dinner, and there were a number of family and friends that wanted to attend with us, so I was looking for an accommodation or to make a reservation at a restaurant for about 50 people, and I'm in rural Newfoundland. So I was a little bit challenged to find a space fairly near our home that would accommodate 50 individuals and be fully accessible to the needs of multiple individuals. So really my choices came down to one particular restaurant. And in doing that, and it was a fabulous night, we had a great time, it was fully accessible, and I brought in about 55 people with us, and a number of those individuals had never been to that location before. What we've realized since that moment is that, it's a restaurant that we frequent and we use as a family, but a lot of the individuals that were coming there with us were coming from other places in the province and had never been to that location before. They had a great experience in that space, and each of them has returned multiple times and brought in new individuals with them. So that one opportunity to open the door, literally, for our family has translated into, an increased number of guests and a number of customers for that business. And that goes on and on and on. The nature of universal design lends itself to ensuring emergency preparedness as well. Emergency preparedness must include provision for all. And as business owners out there, you know that, and it's something that's on your lens, I'm sure. But that's a way that universal design can really help you as well. If your emergency planning firstly considers things that work universally, whether that's the consideration of evacuation procedures that give information in alternate formats, or of accessibility of access to the muster station, we have less worry about special procedures and the extra time and cost and labor that will take when an emergency actually occurs. If you know that your spaces, your emergency exits, are completely accessible and available, you don't have to think about, I wonder did all of my patrons get out in the event of an emergency. In addition to these examples, places that consciously promote universal design can potentially use accessibility created by that design as a positive criteria when making application to funding partners. I'm sure that we're always, no matter what type of business you represent, you're, from time to time, considering ways that you might be able to access funding or apply for loans and grants and that type of thing. And oftentimes there's a little checkbox on those applications or on those forms that says something about providing access for persons with disabilities. Well, if you have a universally designed space, you're very much in that, making yourselves available to apply for some of those special pieces of funding. And the last point that I'd like to say is that universal design really helps you avoid future costs. If we plan and we incorporate when we plan for universal design consideration and features, we really avoid future renovation costs. Sometimes starting a project that will be completed over a period of time or extended funding process, if we consider universal design in the planning, it alleviates things from having to be redone from the beginning. One real quick example of that is in home building, for instance, or if you're building a space that has multiple levels. If you aren't in a place to put in an elevator at the time, or you're not sure if you want to include that, if you stack closets in a space, one over the other, so if you're building a multi-leveled house, for instance, or a B&B, and you have multi-levels, and you have closets stacked on top of each other, what you've done, in fact, is enabled yourself to have an elevator shaft already in place, so that down the road, if you want to incorporate an elevator into that space, it's really easy. You've already got the space allowed, and it avoids some really significant, renovation costs down the road. Just one thought, anyway.
That's great. Thank you very much. Lots of very relevant information there. Of course, we all know that it is the right thing to do to become more accessible or universally accessible, but bringing it home in terms of dollars and cents, I think that's something that's very relevant to tourism operators and, of course, all business owners and operators, because while being the right thing to do is great, and that's a really good, feel-good place to be, but when it translates into dollars and cents on your bottom line, that is awesome. And I wish we had to have this conversation about stacking closets and things like that a couple of years ago before I bought our two-story house about 8 years ago, because as someone who has acquired osteoarthritis in my 40s, that would have been very, very helpful for me to have. So I think we're going to be getting into a new house hunt within the next 10 years, which is unfortunate. But again, information is good to know, so thanks so much. All right, so let's keep moving on. I'll catch up with you guys now. So just another couple of statistics for you to consider. There are about 1/3 of the world's population has some form of a disability. That represents about 1.3 billion people. When you add friends and families of people with disabilities, you can actually add on another 2.3 billion people. What does this mean, all of these numbers combined? That means that these individuals have a total spending power of about $8 trillion annually in disposable income. That's an astounding number, in my opinion. Of course, with the number of aging baby boomers is actually contributing to the number of persons with disabilities daily. And while these numbers are from a global perspective, of course, we're going to take a closer look, closer to home at some statistics here in Canada. So why is a program like Accessbility so important? As I mentioned, the world's aging demographic is showing an increase in the number of persons with mobility issues and disabilities. And this necessitates the provision of accessible infrastructure. And to give a more Canadian perspective, close to 1 in 4 persons in Canada will be aged 65 and over by 2030. Compare that to just 15.3% in 2013. So the number of people 80 years of age and older will reach nearly 5 million by 2063 versus 1.4 million just 2 years ago. Therefore, municipalities, businesses, and communities in Canada are aggressively changing policy to deal with issues of accessibility as they understand the importance in preparing for the future. According to Statistics Canada, 17% of all Canadians, regardless of age, self-identify themselves as having some form of a disability. The seniors market is the largest growing segment of our population, and these are the people who have the most leisure time and the most disposable income. And we want to be able to tap into that. Accessbility has developed, Accessbility has developed nationally recognized evaluation standards to evaluate structures based on accessibility. This will ensure that everyone is welcome at any location. Hashtag everyone is welcome. It is important to note that as we continue to evolve and grow as a society, standards are also changing. The Access Advisor program will stay apprised of any changes to federal and provincial regulations and will continue to work to ensure the industry is up to date regarding current guidelines on accessibility. The Access Advisor program ensures that everyone is welcome at any location regardless of abilities and assists persons with disabilities to make a choice whether this business is accessible or not based on their individual needs. And Nancy, I don't want to put you on the spot there, but I remember you telling me a story that maybe you could share about an accommodation or a hotel that you visited in the province. Of course, we don't name any names or anything, but it was a great example of how a property thought that they were accessible. You had made a phone call, but it actually resulted in having the backdoor access, and how, as a person who uses a wheelchair, how that made you feel.
Absolutely. And I certainly won't mention names and things, but I think that a little later in the presentation we'll talk about authenticity again, but I think that, we can kind of hit on that right now, because authenticity is so important. As Nancy said, I made a call from one part of the island, and I had to go to another place, and I just, I so often call the front desk and inquired about accessibility as a person who uses a wheelchair. And they said, oh, yeah, we're completely accessible. And it was kind of, a couple of years ago, and I was, I guess, not as keen on asking all of the questions that I might need to ask, so I took it at face value, yes, it's accessible. And when I got to the location, I was faced with some stairs to the front entrance and was unsure how I was supposed to enter the building, so I called again and inquired, said I had a reservation, go on. And the individual on the desk was very polite, and she said, okay, just give me a few minutes. I'm serving somebody right now. I need to go to the end of the building and open up the door for you. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't understand. And she said, well, in order for you to get in with a wheelchair, we're accessible, but you have to come in through the fire exit. And so I thought, okay, so as an individual who's using a wheelchair, my only access to the building was through an emergency fire entrance. And that wasn't allowing me independent access, because in order for me to gain entrance, I had to come in through a back door. In addition to that, I had to wait for somebody inside to go to that entrance or the exit, open the door for me, because obviously it's an emergency exit. It doesn't have an entry space. And then I had to go in through the end of this unit of hotel rooms and find my way down to the front desk to check myself in. So as a customer, it was really, I guess I didn't feel very valued or respected or appreciated. And I felt, a little less than welcome in that type of space. And unfortunately, that happens over and over again. And again, it's, they were very appropriate and, nice, I guess is the only other word I could say in the space. But it really didn't value me as a customer.
Thank you very much for sharing that story with us. We really appreciate your perspective, both as someone who works with the coalition, as someone who has a disability, and also as a business traveler. I mean, I think the stories and the perspective that you have to share with us is very relevant to everyone in our industry, so I do really appreciate it.
We're going to call that universal, right?
That's right. So TQA, I just want to make note, we're really pleased to work with and have the support of the Coalition of Persons with Disabilities here in Newfoundland and Labrador. The Coalition recognizes that implementation of a program such as Access Advisor represents a way to improve the lives of persons with disabilities, as they will be able to access validated information about the accessible services and attractions in Newfoundland and Labrador. And just as a note, we did actually have conversations with the Coalition prior to introducing this program to make sure that it was a program that would be beneficial here in the province. So we're very happy to have their support. There is a big opportunity for businesses in the Newfoundland Labrador tourism industry by participating in the Access Advisor program. Verification of accessibility will confirm for your customers what it is that you have to offer. And there are 4 designations within the Access Advisor program. We have our partially accessible designation, and this one is also known as a senior-friendly designation. It's designed for persons who have difficulty with mobility, reflexes, and strength. For example, if you do have a stair or 2 going into your property, as long as you have appropriate handrails, for example, you could still be participate as a partially accessible location. So we'd like for people to think beyond wheelchairs, that don't think that, okay, I can't be accessible because I do have a step or 2, because some people who do use a wheelchair may have some partial accessibility. In addition, we have to consider people who might use mobility aids when walking. Our sight accessible designation is designed for persons with partial sight impairment to total blindness. It covers specific criteria such as warnings for change in surfaces, braille or large print with the appropriate color contrast, and having appropriate lighting. In addition, audible alarms would also be important for this designation as well. For our hearing accessible designation, it's designed for persons with partial or full hearing loss, and it covers such criteria as telephone amplification, television closed captioning options, visual alarms, and our fully accessible designation would be for those persons who require the use of a wheelchair or another mobility assistive device. With the Access Advisor program, oftentimes the upgrades that are required in order to obtain designations are not about costly structural upgrades. Rather, the simple things that we can do that can make a huge difference. For example, as Nancy has showed us in that home example, having lever handles on doors and on faucets rather than knobs that require twisting motion of the wrist. Simple things like adjusting tension on doors, having either removing rugs or ensuring that they are secured, and making sure that you have clear paths of travel. So Nancy, did you want to just speak to, I know some people question the partially accessible, so if you want to just speak to the partial versus the full and the importance and how that all relates back to, universal accessibility as well.
Absolutely. And I think that's really key from my perspective. And I'm going to speak both as a consumer or as a customer, somebody who travels and who certainly, uses public spaces and places of businesses, and also from my perspective in my work with the coalition. Obviously, as a person with a mobility disability and also as in my workplace, we would love to see the day where all places and spaces are fully accessible. And I'm sure that every person in the environment, business owners and the like, would really like to be in that place. Our reality is we need to be real, we need to be truthful, we need to be honest and upfront. And we don't have that today. We all know that. And we know that we're not going to have it in the next few years. But I think that, that is a growing trend, and I'm sure that all of our spaces, are becoming more and more accessible. But what I'd like to say, and Nancy and I have had this conversation several times over, and I'd really like to get this message out, that as a consumer, what's most important for me is the authenticity of the knowledge that you have around the accessibility of your location. Absolutely, I'd love for everything to be fully accessible. But if you have a partially accessible space, what's so important to me as a consumer is that you're willing to communicate that information to me. If I'm making a reservation, again, from one side of the province to the other, or from one side of the country, or from another country to come to this place, if I pick up the phone, or if I'm inquiring on an email and ask, are you accessible, I need to know that what accessibility means in that space. And it's really important that staff, whoever's answering the phone, can communicate that authentically. So in the example that I used a little while ago about the accommodations that I was requiring, if that individual had been able to answer the phone with, well, we do have limited access, or we do have some access. In order for you to gain access using a wheelchair, this is the process that we take. Then as a consumer, I would have been much more able to make that decision on my own as to whether or not that was an accommodation that would be appropriate for me. And I wouldn't have been had the opportunity to feel the negative response that I felt in that location. It would have translated much better. I would have had no opportunity to go to the public and say, well, this is the negative experience I had in that hotel. I wouldn't suggest you go there. But that's the taste that was left in my mouth from that experience. If I have only had a positive experience there, there would have been real opportunity for me to either choose to stay or not to stay, but I could really communicate that authentically to my friends, to my coworkers, to other individuals, and that really factors into the bottom line. I think I'll leave it there because we'll get into some other stuff.
Sure. Okay. Yep, absolutely. Authenticity. We have to remember that word. And we couldn't agree more. So should everyone be fully accessible? Absolutely. That is the gold star standard. However, again, like Nancy said, the reality is that not everyone may be able to be accessible, either due to structural constraints of their building. That 32-inch door is never going to be a 36-inch door, either because of budgeting or different reasons with the building. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing that you can do. There are often little things that you can do. Yep.
And I'll just jump in for 1 second. Sometimes those fixes are so minimal, and by auditing yourselves, by following through this process with the Access Advisor, when you have that information, of where you are today, authentically where you are, it gives you a real opportunity to figure out where you would like to be, where you need to be, and planning for those steps. Sometimes those things are literally $5 fixes.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible the amount of things that I run into as a consumer, and I frequently use, especially accommodations throughout this province. I travel quite a bit on my work, and some of the things that I've run into, the barriers that I've run into, are literally $5 fixes. Sometimes even, in the larger hotels where the spaces are fully accessible, with the exception of, oh, you know what, I just can't reach the microwave, but if that was on the shelf lower, it'd be fully accessible to me. Or just the place where I hang my towel in the bathroom is only at the height of somebody who's standing. We should have had one at a lower level for myself. Some of those things that you consider really leave such a positive, remembrance, if that's a word, for your customers, and it goes a long way.
Excellent. So I just got another couple of examples here of some things that Access Advisor can do, just to show that little things can make a big difference. Sometimes, sorry, just lost my train of thought. Everyone can do things that can help them become a little bit more accessible than what you currently are, and oftentimes it is the little things that can make a big difference. For example, if you do have steps, like I mentioned, put in a handrail. That makes the access to those steps a whole lot easier. There are people who have really good upper body strength, or even just having that to steady them as they're going over the stairs. That makes it a whole lot easier. Having grab bars in the appropriate places. Sometimes they're in place, but they might not be in the correct place. All it is just to ask the questions. They're certainly available, and you can get them, the grab bars, that they look aesthetically pleasing. They don't always have to look industrial like the one I have pictured there, but they are very important in washrooms especially. Ensuring that any hazards are outlined clearly and that you have clear paths of travel is very important, and that doesn't cost anything. That's simply, moving furniture around, like I mentioned, making sure rugs were secured. Having the appropriate visual as well as audible alarms. Nancy spoke about emergency preparedness and how universally that is extremely important. So considering everybody when you have your emergency preparedness plans, and having audible as visual alarms is great. Simple things like having an iPad or even pen and paper available at the front desk or in your restaurant that you can communicate with somebody who does have a hearing disability would be very beneficial. Ensuring that the telephones that you have available in your public spaces have the amplification, or that they have volume control, and that they can be used by different people with different abilities as well. Color contrast is one of the easiest, and doesn't actually even cost anything to do this. So if you're doing presentations, if you're creating signage, make sure you have the good color contrast. The reason that we put up signage is for people to see it, so make sure that everyone can see it. And that's something, like I said, it doesn't cost anything, but it would make a big difference in your signage. And ensuring that you have large print. Any forms that you have for people to fill out, try to have it as large of a font, and that's only, you can blow it up on a photocopier, you can increase the font. Again, doesn't cost anything, but would make a big difference. And also having good lighting. One of the biggest barriers to access can be people tripping and falling, and just because simply there isn't enough lighting. So make sure all public areas and all areas that your customers will be accessing are well lit. So I guess the reality is that a lot of places think that they are accessible and that they may meet the minimum entry requirements. But I'd like to challenge you to have a look around your individual places of business, or even businesses that you frequent as a customer. Can everyone avail of all the features or amenities in this location? And that's basically what we would do with an Access Advisor inspection. We would look at accessibility from the point of view of your customer and going above and beyond the minimum requirements. So I just want to take you through the actual designation process and what happens if you were to participate in an Access Advisor program. So once you've made the decision to have your business or event's accessibility evaluated, a representative from TQA will schedule a date for the evaluation, and depending on the type of business or event, it could take a couple of hours. You don't have to accompany the evaluator as they're going through. That's up to you. You're more than welcome to. You can certainly learn something as you go along, but it does get detailed in that a lot of the code requirements are measured for heights of counters and things like that. So it does get into a fair bit of detail. A report is then prepared that outlines your current level of accessibility and may make recommendations for areas of improvement. Once the recommendations have been completed and your designation is awarded, you'll receive marketing materials so that you can market your designation. You would receive a decal that you could display at your place of business that lets travelers know that you have participated in this program and that you have been verified for accessibility. As well, you can receive logos that you can use online and in print advertising. You would receive a listing on accessadvisor.com, and this program is actually in use in all of Atlantic Canada right now. And you would receive a different symbol, a special symbol in the Newfoundland Labrador Traveler's Guide indicating that you have participated and you have this commitment to accessibility. We re-inspect or re-evaluate every 4 years. And if you are already a participant of Canada Select or Camping Select, this would be done every 2 years as part of your biennial inspection. And this is really important as we change furniture, we move things around. It's really important to have that follow-up process to ensure that standards are maintained in the long term. And we also are available then to provide ongoing support to tourism operators and to keep them up to date on any changes in regulations. The cost of the Access Advisor initial evaluation is $200, and then the annual participation fee is reduced to $80 every year thereafter. So we recognize that any fee, of course, is one more fee for operators to pay, but we really believe that you will see the return on your investment if you take these steps to identify and promote your level of accessibility. So in real terms, if you think about it, it's the cost of a one-night accommodation per year for that first evaluation and then significantly less for every year thereafter. There are many benefits to becoming more accessible. And just as a summary, I just want to run through 3 of the key benefits that I'd like you to take away with you today. We do have an aging demographic, and this is contributing to the rise in the number of persons with disabilities. This is a fact. If customers cannot enter and do business with you, they will go somewhere else. That is another hard fact. There is a large untapped market, and you can realize the return on your investment quickly. By having an audit, you will have confidence that you are promoting the correct level of accessibility and that you are committed to providing an enhanced experience for all guests, regardless of abilities. You will know where to focus your efforts today and how to plan for the future. Having authenticity around accessibility levels is important, but universal design enables accessibility, which results in positive customer experiences. And Nancy, if you just want to get in your key message there on that, you can certainly jump in.
Absolutely. So I'll just kind of reiterate what I said earlier. Accessibility equals profitability, straightforward. There are many, many individuals with huge buying power in this province and in this world, as Nancy demonstrated already. And accessibility absolutely equals profitability. But beyond that, like I said earlier, nobody expects every place in this province or in the world, actually, to be fully accessible right now. We know that that's not the case. But I can't stress how important it is to be able to have the knowledge of where you actually are and be able to communicate that with your patrons, with your guests. It just goes so far from the social place, but also to the bottom line. Obviously, if people have a good experience, they're going to come back. If they had a bad one, they're not coming back. And this is your opportunity to say, you know what, there are things that I need to do better, or there are things that I'm doing really well, and that's great. But this is the reality of where I am today, and this is what I have to offer. And I can tell you what, that is treated, that is understood and valued very much by individuals who have those needs.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So we'll just move along here. Although this Service Animal Act is not actually specifically part of the Access Advisor program, we just wanted to make everyone aware that there is a Service Animal Act in Newfoundland Labrador, and it is a really very relevant piece of legislation to businesses. Nancy, perhaps you would like to take us through some key facts that are related to the Service Animal Act for those people who might not be aware?
Sure, I can. As Nancy said, the Service Animal Act there is legislation that says that all places and spaces must be able to open the doors or accommodate service animals. You do not have the choice to prevent entry of an individual to an establishment because they're using a service animal. And obviously, most of us are on the page and understanding that's absolutely appropriate today. One point that's sometimes missed, though, is a point that I always like to, convey to individuals in sessions like this. While the individual who uses a service animal, and a service animal it's usually a dog, but other animals are certainly allowed and available. Service animals are visible. When an animal is in service, that animal will be wearing a harness or a vest of some type or other identifying materials. Those logos or those identification materials aren't always the same, and we don't have legislation that dictates it has to look exactly like this. There's a number of different things that you may or may not see. But as a business owner or an individual who is responsible for a place, I also need you to understand that you do have the right to ensure that this particular animal is in fact a service animal. Most of the animals out there who are being used as service animals are absolutely legitimate. And I'm going to encourage you to think that if somebody comes to your establishment and they have a service animal with them, if you have no reason to suspect otherwise, absolutely just provide entrance and accommodation. You have to do that. But if there's something about a situation that is causing you any alarm, if you're not seeing identification readily in terms of a harness and or a vest on that animal that says this is a service animal, if you have legitimate reason for question, if the animal is behaving in a way that you think is not the typical behavior of a service animal, you do have the right to ask the individual who is responsible for that service animal to see documentation regarding that animal. The onus is on that individual to provide that. And in addition to that, there are animals that we call comfort animals, which are not really service animals. There's less in terms of legislation around the duty to accommodate comfort animals, but typically most establishments will allow comfort animals in the same way we do service animals. If there is a challenge for you and you have to request documentation or identification, a person who is using a comfort animal usually has a letter from a physician that says that this animal is being used as a comfort animal and as an accommodation for a person's disability. That is absolutely something that you need to be aware of and be able to respect and understand. And if you have further questions about any of that, please don't hesitate to call us at the Coalition. And if you're looking for some specific information, we can certainly help you with that. And I know that our contact information will be given out through this site shortly.
Absolutely, it will. Thank you very much. It's really important as business owners and operators to know our rights and to be able to know that it's okay to ask for that information. Sometimes we might be hesitant to do that. So thanks so much for pointing that out. So moving forward, there is still a great deal of work to be done, but our board of TQA is committed to its priorities. Keeping a focus on ensuring the programming we offer is relevant and reflective of where the industry is, but also what travelers need is of paramount importance. We will also ensure the evolution of our new governance structure is fully supported and becomes a solid foundation on which we move forward. Communications is also a core pillar of our new brand and approach. It is important that we both engage with tourism stakeholders for input, but also that we share where we are as we evolve. And TQA's board is committed to doing this. So we had, Nancy's been a great wealth of information today, And she also has been gracious enough to provide us with some links to some additional resources. Did you want to just quickly mention what those are?
Sure. Just really briefly, you can see the resource page in front of you, but the first one talks about changes to legislation around accessibility, and actually what it is modifications of regulations currently. And I'm not going to go into any real detail because, again, it's something that you can access through that site. And if you have questions, you can certainly contact us at the Coalition, and we can help you out there as well. But for business owners currently, just a couple of weeks ago, there was an announcement made by provincial government. Mr. Sherry Gavin Walsh made an announcement around some modifications to some of the legislation as it currently exists today. And there's some things that are happening within the next 6 weeks and things that are happening within the next 6 months around, especially around blue zones, blue zone areas, spaces, and that type of thing, and also some specific information about gradients and ramps and all that type of thing. So it's information that is certainly important to individuals who have, currently have spaces or places that may need a little bit of work in the upcoming, in the short term, as well in the long term or the longer term. There's a real push toward changes of the accessibility legislation. So in the next, I'm going to say in the next month, and certainly within the next year or two, we're going to see some changes coming down that way as well. The other resources that I've mentioned, there's a couple of resources from the CNIB, and they would be for persons who have low vision or who are blind. And clearingourpath.ca is a really user-friendly site that you can go in if you're not sure if you're providing the best service that you could be providing. Again, a lot of it is quick fixes, just ways of thinking about things in a way that would be universal, and including in that universal lens, persons with low vision. I also mentioned the Universal Design NL site that we briefly went into. Obviously, there's a lot of information there about universal design and some great links. And one other piece that I will mention, and that's the tab there that says general info about disability etiquette. It's just a one-pager. I often call it my cheat sheet when I'm doing training for groups, because it will give you literally a one-pager about opportunities to use language in the most respectful and appreciated way right now when we're working with and working as persons with disabilities. And it's a real simple, straightforward sheet, but really some useful information, especially for your frontline staff and individuals who are, on the phones and that type of thing. So I'm going to leave it there. And again, of course, I'm with CODNL.ca, Coalition of Persons with Disabilities. And if you have any questions around any of this, we're always available.
Thank you very much. And we will include all of those links when we send out a follow-up email as well. We do have a slide up here now that has contact information for myself and Gail Dick, who wasn't able to join us today, but she's our manager and senior ratings advisor. Gail predominantly delivers the Canada Select and Camping Select programs. However, she is involved with Access Advisor and will be doing some evaluations going forward as well. Nancy's contact information is there as well as mine. And please feel free to, if you're on social media, check out our website, follow us on social media, like us, tweet us, all that kind of stuff. We always share lots of great tips and good news stories, so we'd love to have you follow us along on that journey. If you do think of any questions after the fact, feel free to give us a call. Perfect. Thank you so much. Those are people we definitely need to communicate with, are the decision makers, but also people on the front line, and people who influence the decision makers are great, such as yourself. So thanks very much for that. If you would like to schedule an evaluation to determine your level of accessibility, or if you do have any questions on any of TQA's programs, please feel free to contact us. Our goal is to work with all tourism operators and to assist them in raising the level of quality in their operations for all persons, regardless of abilities. We do have 2 additional webinars coming up. Quality in Canada Select Ratings is scheduled for Wednesday, November 22nd, and a TAP refresher will be held on November 29th, and both are at the same time at 10 a.m. Please send along an email if you haven't already if you want to register for these presentations. Thank you very much for your time today. I hope you've learned a little something about accessibility levels and universal design and the importance of that authenticity and the importance of the auditing of your business or your event. You will receive a follow-up email with some more information and resources, such as those we discussed today, as well as a link to an evaluation survey so you can give us your feedback. Check out tqanl.ca for more information on everything related to quality assurance in tourism in Newfoundland and Labrador, as well as I mentioned, follow us on social media. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you, Jennifer, for assisting with our technology help here, and thank you so much, Nancy, for your time and for your expertise in this area. We certainly appreciate your support and your time to helping us out. Thanks so much for joining us.